Support for Consider This is provided by the University of Nebraska at Omaha College of Communication, Fine Arts, and Media.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
Like what? Really? Okay, well, what about Medicare or Medicaid? Wow, I had no idea. Well, I suppose my kids could look after me. That's true. Well, there's always our savings and assets to fall back on. Whoa. I had no idea it was that expensive. So what are my options?
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, the Aging Nebraskans Task Force. Joining us to talk more about it are Mark Intermill, Advocacy Director for AARP Nebraska, and Julie Kaminsky, Executive Director for Leading Age Nebraska. Welcome to the two of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Mark, let's start with you. How do you define the aging population?
That's probably a more difficult question than you might think. I think that in the Aging Nebraskans Task Force, what we're interested in is looking at those conditions that necessitate some sort of support for those individuals who have some sort of a disability. And that can come at any age. We're all aging. Every day I'm a day older than I was the day before. And it's just the accumulation of those types of things that lead to some sort of disability that we really want to focus on. How do we provide support for those individuals who do need some help, which could come at 85, it could come at 65. So it's really the need as opposed to the age, I think, that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. And Julie, talk with us specifically about numbers between 2010, 2020, and we'll put up a graphic for our viewers too.
Sure. You know, I think one of the things that spurred the Aging Nebraskans Task Force into creation was that if you look at our state as a whole, we are aging. And particularly in our rural areas, we are having a lot of they call the older old, so those who are 85 plus. And when you look at the growth in our 65 plus population, it's going to increase 31.6% in 10 years, and we're already halfway there. So in the next 5 years, our total 65 plus population will be at 324,697. And I think as the task force was being formed, it was really trying to be thoughtful about how do we address the needs of this growing population and do it not just for the Omaha-Lincoln area, but across the state. How do we put thoughtful services and information in place to help this population as they age?
Okay, and Mark, I mean, we've known about this for quite some time, right? We knew the population was going to be aging. We kind of predicted this was going to happen. So why is this such a hot button now?
Well, I think a couple of years ago we saw the first baby boomer cross over the age of 65, which kind of caused some alarms to go off. And really in terms of long-term care and those types of services, it's really in the 80 plus age group that those types of things occur. So we know it's coming and we have a little bit of time to prepare for that. So I think that's why it was so important to really look at this now. Is the more advanced time that we can have to be able to prepare, the more important it is. So I think that was really kind of looking at what's coming down the pike was important.
Okay, thank you. And Julie, you know, like anything else, this was something that had been in the works, and so March of 2014, right, this task force created. Talk to us a little bit about just the time that led up to that and then what was transpiring to actually get this thing going.
You know, really I credit Senator Bowles for this whole thing being implemented. And, you know, when we asked her what was the impetus for creating this, and she said really when she was out going door to door, meeting with her constituents. It was meeting with these individuals who were aging in place, aging in their homes, and maybe or maybe not with the appropriate services. And she said that just stuck in her mind, that as she is representing her constituents, that it was critical to do something about it. And so that led to the creation of LB 690, which implemented the Aging Nebraska Task Force. So, I think really it's just, as Mark said, it's a proactive and not a reactive approach, and really a statewide look at what's going on with our aging population.
Okay, and Mark, we do have a photograph of Senator Bowles. For someone who's not ever met her, how would you introduce her to somebody?
Well, I've known Senator Bowles before she was Senator Bowles, and so we've had worked together on different projects over the years. And I think what Julie just said about the impetus for her looking into this kind of is indicative of her approach of seeing a problem and trying to address it. District 29 that Senator Bowles serves is one of the South Central Lincoln. It's a lot of houses that were built in the 60s and 70s, and we have people who bought them then and when they were in their 20s and 30s, and now are in their 70s and 80s. So it is indicative of that particular part of Lincoln, and that's true of a lot of different sort of near suburb areas that we do see a lot of aging in place in those communities. And I think it's to Senator Bowles' credit that she took a look at that and decided to try to do something to make sure that we are able to handle the challenge as well.
Well, and doing what the two of you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Working with older adults and their families. How exciting, right, to have somebody who is a decision maker step up, regardless of outcome, which we all hope is good, obviously. Just very energizing, right, to see somebody step in.
A breath of fresh air, to be quite honest. To have somebody proactively tackle aging issues in our state is phenomenal.
So Mark, how has she done it, really? I mean, she's one person. She obviously pulled together a team, but what is her key, really, to effectiveness and so forth?
No, I think that what you just said is getting everybody together who has an interest, who has a stake in the issue, and just starting to discuss ideas. When you bring people together and you have a problem that needs a solution, that's usually the best way to tackle it, is to get all the ideas on the table and sort of sort through what makes sense.
Okay, now we have another graphic we want to put up for folks, because there are some other people who have been instrumental in getting this going. And so, Mark, if you would just walk us through these folks,
Sure.
That would be great.
Well, Senator Bowles obviously is the chair. Senator Al Davis from Hyannis out in the Sandhills is the vice chair. Senator Davis is also serving currently as the chairman of the Retirement Committee in the legislature. Senator Kathy Campbell of Lincoln is the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. Senator Tanya Cook has been serving as the chair of the legislature's Planning Committee. And Senator Heath Mello from here in Omaha is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. So we've got some key decision makers who are engaged in this process, which is really great.
Yeah, those at the forefront, and those obviously working behind the scenes, right, in the committee and subcommittee work. Julie, very busy person. How did you become involved in all of this and as actively engaged as you are?
I think as Mark mentioned, it's really when Senator Bowles was crafting this group, she looked for key stakeholders in a variety of different organizations, whether it was on the provider side, caregiver side, on the actual individual, and really wanted to make sure she had a broad representation. So, as you know, Leading Age Nebraska, we represent the nonprofit providers of senior and housing and services across the state. So knowing that housing and services is a component of this, we just offered our services to help Senator Bowles as she was working through some of the research pieces as well.
Okay, and we do have goals like anything else. We want to put those up. And Julie, if you could just walk us through the goals and objectives of this.
Sure. If you look at the Aging Nebraska's task force, they created an actual strategic plan which had 5 goals. But if you consolidate those, really the goal of this task force was to promote home and community-based care. And this really came out of as she was meeting with constituents, they said, we want to stay in our home. We want to age in place for as long as safely as possible. So that home and community-based care piece is really a priority. And then knowing personal responsibility for financial planning, as the video alluded to, aging in place can sometimes not be a cheap option. So how do we craft some options that really look at personal responsibility for financial planning? And then a strategic coordination of services. And this could do anything from Alzheimer's care to workforce and a variety of other issues. But how do we create the coordination of those services for the individuals?
Okay, so big job. Obviously, the two of you very actively involved, and we've seen some other folks' names come up on the screen. Who are these other people who are sitting around the table helping you brainstorm, helping you realize at least the first steps in all of this to take this forward as effectively as it needs to go? I mean, the state's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
How did you go out and select folks who you knew were going to be?
Well, there were certain organizations that, as Julie mentioned, that the providers of service, so both the Nebraska Healthcare Association as well as Leading Age were obvious groups that needed to be included in the discussions. The area agencies on aging have a representative. And as we went along, we found other people who just heard about the task force and they had some ideas that they wanted to include. So we've tried to be as inclusive as we can, and as we've broken into committees, those committees have been sought out other people who might have some information, some ideas to provide that will help us come up with a good plan.
Yeah, and we're talking about chunks of time here. This isn't just a one meeting and you're done. This is an ongoing process.
And I think as Senator Bowles was creating the actual strategic plan, she had teletown halls, AARP conducted surveys, she did focus groups, she did collaboratives, she had a public hearing. So really, as this all was crafted, there was a few key stakeholders, but her goal was to get the voice of the entire state of Nebraska. And I think, to her credit again, did that in a variety of different media ways so that everybody across the state could have their voice be heard as we work on crafting the goals.
Okay, so Mark, then up until this point, because we rewound back to March of 2014, and kind of walked our way up to this point, what has been accomplished so far in all of this?
Well, last legislative session, there was some legislation that was enacted that did two things. First of all, it authorized some Aging and Disability Resource Center demonstration projects. And when we survey our membership, we often ask questions about long-term care. What would they find useful? And the thing that comes up is information, because long-term care is not something you really think about until you need it. And at that point, you want to have some place where you can go to get information that's objective, that's accurate, that's comprehensive. So that was one of the things that came out of the first year of the Aging Nebraskans Task Force, was recognition that we need to do a better job in Nebraska of having information ready for people when they need it. The other part of that legislation was authorizing a state plan for Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. And so, along with the Alzheimer's Association, they were brought into the process of developing that plan. And we've, another example of things that we've done to try to get public input, the Alzheimer's Association, AARP, held 4 town hall meetings across the state in diverse places like Omaha, Pender, Kearney, and Alliance, to just go through a process of gathering information from people about what sort of services are, what's the existing status of services for people with dementia, what sort of things will be helpful in the future, so that we can have an Alzheimer's state plan that is meaningful, that does make changes, that does make a positive impact on the people who have dementia and their caregivers.
And Mark, you were very actively engaged in all of that, I know, and I would imagine At least one of the questions viewers would be wanting to know right now is, first of all, what did come out of those 4 different things? Did you have an aha moment where you thought, wow, without this we would have never guessed?
Yeah, there were a lot of similarities in the town hall meetings from community to community, but there were differences too. And I think it was the differences that were really interesting and led to the aha moment for me that these services are really community-based. We probably can't come up with a single plan for the state of Nebraska because what happens in Alliance or the services that are available in Alliance compared to Kearney or Omaha or even Pender are completely different. So there's a set of responses for each community. And I think what you will see in the Alzheimer's State Plan is a recognition that these services have to be community-based. They have to, when you're in Pender, you need to know what the services are in Pender, and you have to have a system supporting you there. So we can do some things to sort of set the parameters of what is kind of an optimal level, but it really is up to those communities to come up with the actual services and figure out what works best for them.
Yeah, and Julie, I would imagine another thing that came as a result of all of this when you talk about rural versus, that kind of thing, is the whole educational component, right? That foundational piece. So we have the services that Mark is talking about, but more so even with some of those areas that are further out, it's getting them basic information so that they have an idea of what they have or don't have in services.
One of the things they're looking at in the Alzheimer's State Plan is, can there be a county map where basically somebody could go to a site, click on the map, and see maybe what the resources and education are available specific to that county. And I think that's where it's been great to have such a collaborative group as we look at these different pieces. And one of the things we've dialogued about is how do we create dementia-friendly communities across the state. And Home Instead is one of the individuals on the task force, and they have some excellent resources that they've already created along with the Alzheimer's Association. So there's a lot of information here in our state. It's a matter of how do we package it into a single point of entry so that whoever is struggling with this, whether again they're in Pender or Alliance or Omaha or Nebraska, that they can click on a map and find out what the resources are available to them. So,
and I think the Aging and Disability Resource Centers fit into that really well too, that could be the vehicle for that type of thing to happen. So we have a number of things that are kind of converging here at this point in time. We also have the Office of Public Guardianship, which the safety of persons with dementia came up frequently, and what sort of legal types of things do you need to be in place for a person to make sure that they're safe. So we have a number of things that are just a wonderful convergence of things at this point that seems to be working towards coming up with a really sound plan for aging services in the future.
Well, I wanted to ask you about these town halls, and what a great idea too. The good news is people's voices are being heard, but I would imagine the dynamic in a group like that was difficult as well, because they're in the throes of that right now, and not only do they want their voices to be heard, but they want something to have happened yesterday. And so I would imagine some of that post-discussion was just as important as what was going on in the large group.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I would see in the town hall meetings, we would have providers of service as well as those who needed services. And they may not have been aware of each other prior to the town halls, so just that very simple fact that they showed up in the same room provided some assistance to those who needed the help. But I think beyond that dynamic, I think we are starting to kind of formulate the basics of a state plan, but we want to continue to have those town hall meetings after we have a kind of a template put together, so that we can get some feedback from folks across the state to make sure that we're on the right track.
Okay, and just to clarify before we move forward, the ADRCs, what is the status, the Aging and Disability Resource Center? So if folks are watching, anxious to want to pick up a phone and have somebody on the other end, what is the status of that now?
So The law authorizes 3 demonstration projects. So there is a request for proposal that's out that the area agencies on aging are the entities that can apply for these in conjunction with the independent living centers across the state that serve the younger population that has a disability. So we're in the process of getting those proposals together. So it's moving along very well. I have to commend the State Unit on Aging. They've taken a really aggressive approach to making sure that this gets started. So they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Okay, thank you. And so another arm in all of this is financial independence. First of all, getting folks to recognize that we are all aging and that our needs are going to change, but that it's expensive, as we've alluded to. And so talk a little bit, just broad strokes in terms of what's going on in that particular area. Julie?
So one of the things we did is we broke out into subcommittee work, and one of them was financing long-term services and supports. And what we really did is an environmental scan of what's going on in Nebraska, and we engaged a national facilitator through National Leading Age, Olivia Mastery, who has walked other states through this discussion. So it's been really helpful to have her perspective, and always being mindful of the uniqueness of Nebraska as we, again, kind of took a scan of the environment to see what we have, where are the gaps, and then how can we create incentives or products to help fill that gap. And again, the goal is to, as people age, how do we ensure they have the services to be able to age in place comfortably, and to do that with a sense of personal responsibility tied into that. And that's a delicate balance, I think, as you go through that. But again, just being mindful of the need that people have, that they want to age in place. And we need to make sure we have the appropriate services funded and or the ability to pay for those through different vehicles. So.
Okay, and so just again from an educational standpoint, what types of things, because folks may not know, are currently in place to serve as incentives as we move forward to try to solve some more of these things? But what currently do we have here in the state?
Well, when people think of financing long-term care, they often think of long-term care insurance. And Nebraska does have a long-term care savings plan that there are several banks around the state that offer a place where you can set up a long-term care savings plan and receive a state income tax deduction for contributions to that plan. For people over 50, they can then use the proceeds of that plan to pay for their long-term care insurance. But we're also looking at a lot other types of, that's one of the things that the Financial Independence Committee is looking at, is what other things might we need to have in place to encourage people to there's a range of long-term care financing vehicles, and we're looking at maybe there need to be some others too. One that is being considered is to look at a product that starts out as a life insurance product for younger families that transitions into a long-term care insurance when dependents are out of the house and you may not need long-term life insurance as much as you did earlier. So those are, I think, some really exciting things that we're looking at here to try to make it a little bit easier for people to finance their own long-term care services.
And Julie, one thing to really key in on here is that one size does not fit all. So while you're looking at other states and maybe what they have done, the groups here are really focused on what works for Nebraska and what maybe we don't think is going to work for Nebraska, so that it's really more tailor-made, mindful of the state, correct?
Exactly. I think that's where, as Mark mentioned, there's some excitement around trying to craft something new and innovative that would entice, for me, for example, I don't have long-term care insurance and I've been in this field for 15 years. But maybe a vehicle like this would incentivize me. So I think we're really looking, and we've got a lot of the stakeholders from the Department of Insurance in there and different people that we need to make sure, as we're crafting some different options, to be considered that they're viable options and that they're sustainable options to encourage that personal responsibility when it comes to paying for long-term services and supports.
Okay, Thank you. And Mark, in just the few minutes that we have remaining, the final thought here is Nebraska is a big state, very diverse, right? Mm-hmm. Coordination of services. So it's one thing to know that they exist. So, it's probably not fair to throw this at you at the end here, but how is that going to proceed?
We have, and Nebraska, this is one of the things that we do well in Nebraska. We have a program called the Nebraska Care Management Program that's operated through the area agencies on aging that helps people with that service coordination. So if you're a caregiver of somebody, you have a parent who needs long-term care, you're kind of at wit's end as to how to figure out how to do it. There are people that can come in, assess the situation, come up with a plan of care, and help you implement that plan of care, make the arrangements. So I think we have a structure here in place. We just need to build out and make sure. A lot of people don't know that exists. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the process, is just to make sure that through the Aging and Disability Resource Centers, to help raise the profile of the services that we do have and make sure that people get the services that they need.
Okay, very nicely done. 1 minute here. Next steps.
We are continuing, the committees are continuing. Julie and I are kind of coordinating the financial independence part of it. We have some exciting meetings coming up to look at some of those products. The Alzheimer's, there's a committee looking at the Alzheimer's state plan that they are busily putting that together and have made some great progress in that front. And other committees looking at things like workforce, transportation, the challenges that have vexed us for a long time.
Wow. Okay, we want to put up a website. So if folks want some more information, we want them to have it. So dhhs.ne.gov/Medicaid/aging. Julie, final thoughts.
I think just kudos to Senator Bowles for really being the impetus to craft this group and to get a group of thought leaders, but then not to stop there, to really tap into the entire state. So I think many committees are formed that oftentimes don't get the feedback of those they serve. And the priority here was to make sure, if we're crafting a plan and services for aging Nebraskans, let's ask them what they want.
Okay.
And just to make sure we really are thoughtful of them.
Well, thank you both for the roles that you're playing in all of this too. We wish you very well moving
Thank
forward.
you.
Thank you.
You bet. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or email us at considerthis@tvmail.unomaha.edu.